Now we're live, everybody. This is Trail Tuesday Live with Joe Walewski, who is at Chickadee Landing up near Finland, Minnesota at Wolf Ridge Environmental Learning Center. So we are going to hang out for a few minutes while we...
And right away, a chickadee's on my head. There. It just flew away. I think they're going to be more interested in landing on my head than my hand right now.
But we can see it all. You can't see. Do you need us to tell you if they're on their head? Can you feel it?
Oh, I can feel it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I think one's coming right now.
Oh, yep, he's there.
Yeah.
Hello. You can put some bird seed on your head, right?
I did, yes.
Oh, you did. Oh, fun to go.
I did.
All right. Well, I think with that, Joe, we should kick it off. Everybody, you hopefully know Joe Walewski. He's been a guest for Minnesota Master Naturalist Trail Tuesday in the past. And he is, again, coming to us live through the wonders of smartphone technology and cell phone access. So, Joe, tell us where you are and what you're doing and what you're seeing.
Absolutely. So welcome here, everybody. Every once in a while, I'll stop talking, and that's me, not our connection, because when a chickadee lands on me, on my head or my hand, I'll stop to see if I can keep it there. One landed on my head momentarily. But anyway, this is the most magical place at Wolf Ridge. That's my opinion. and it's called Chickadee Landing. So back in 1988, we moved here to this new site in Finland, and we built a set of feeders right here in this area because it was right on the edge of an evergreen forest and a little bit of an open, like maple scrubby sort of place. We thought, this is great. This is an edge. And then somebody, Peter Harris, got in his head, hey, why don't we put a chair out there with a cutout of a person and some old clothes, and then the chickadees will get used to it and land. Just like that. and so we did that, and lo and behold, it worked. That guy's amazing. He's a genius when it comes to magic. Anyway, so you fast forward from that time period to now, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I count 21 cutout bodies, like the one right behind me, that are scattered here on benches. And we keep these feeders filled with sunflower seed, and the chickadees come visiting, and all the chickadees that are around here have spent their entire lives used to these human forms out here. So I always say to the kids, so we have a bunch of dummies out there, and if we can go out there and act like a dummy, chickadees will land on us too. and I've even encouraged. There we go. There was one in my head. I've even encouraged kids to try to do some of this kind of stuff in their backyard at their feeders. And then I will hear stories from parents who will return, or siblings who return and go, oh yeah, we did that in our backyard. And so it works all over the place. The chickadees are the bravest, and that's what will probably come land here. Unfortunately, we also have red squirrels, and they're kind of brave too, so they may run up on my arm too. Who knows? But we've got these chickadees here, and can you hear that? That one? There's that one, Andrea. That.
Yep. Spring's here.
Spring's here. Yeah. So definitely the chickadees are changing some of their calls. We'll hear the chickadee dee every once in a while and a few other calls, but that spring's here, or sweetie, or Phoebe, however you want to hear it. Can you hear the red squirrels just chattering over here?
Yeah, they're kind of a ruckus.
Go someplace else. Anyway.
Come over here and say that big times, right?
This is great. But I've been coming out here and teaching classes the past few weeks, and I just thought that what a great spot. I wanted to share this more broadly, and so I got in touch with Andrea, and I said, Andrea, we got to do this as one of your Trail Tuesdays. And so just sitting out here and having the chickadees land, this is a great joy for me. I might come do this even if I wasn't teaching or doing one of these things. But I should tell you a couple other stories while I'm babbling just a little bit, is that earlier early in the week. Today's Tuesday. That'd be yesterday. Oh my gosh. Yesterday, we taught 3 birds classes, and it was all focused on bird research. And so we have another set of feeders where we're doing some particular research on chickadees. And so we're banding the chickadees that are there. And in particular, not only putting a Fish and Wildlife Service band on them to identify them, but also a little magnetic tag that has a unique identifier to it, so that when that chickadee lands on a specially fitted feeder, we can record the exact chickadee. And so we've been doing that research for nearly a year now, putting these what are called pit tags on them. And anyway, as the chickadees go land there, we can keep track of the exact individual. We can start to use all that data. And we have found that the most times one chickadee visited the set of feeders in one day was 356 times.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So presumably it's getting 356 seeds. It did not eat all of those. And in fact, I love the correlation between some of the natural history stuff that I've been reading about chickadees and that data, that in the 1940s, there was a person who studied it without pit tags, of course, studied chickadees and found that October was the time when chickadees visited the feeders the most voraciously. Guess what? That's when that one chickadee visited the one here at Wolf Ridge, 350 sometimes. Yeah. But then we've also been learning by doing that banding that because we've been banding just thoroughly, that there are at least 87 different chickadees around that set of feeders. 87. And you look at your feeders and you figure, oh my gosh, there we go. We've got maybe about 8 chickadees here or something like that. And that's what I would have guessed down there at those feeders, but there's 87. Oh my gosh.
Different individuals.
Different individuals, at least, and likely more. And since we have feeders all scattered around here at Wolf Ridge, we've measured the nearest we have between the 2 feeders that have those computers at them is a half mile, and 3 of those birds have flown to the other feeder. That's it. That's it.
So their territories are so small, or what?
Yeah, their overall range seems to be pretty small. Yeah, and so they're not migratory. They stay around, and what they'll do is they'll congregate. Here comes a chickadee closer to me. Or maybe not. But they'll congregate during the winter time and focus on feeding and act sort of like a pack and protect each other. You're a really loud one, my goodness. But in the late spring and summer, they'll disperse. And so it must be those 87 birds are all in that one small area. And then over here, there's probably another 87 birds, but then just 3 of them were brave enough to venture further away from their other area, that sort of thing. Yeah. Oh, only there for a little bit. I don't know if you caught that.
Drive by. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's on your street. Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
Nice.
Yeah. And right now, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, well, just so these birds are familiar with the presence of humans. So at some point, can you talk about habituation and how the role that humans play in chickadees' lives, I guess, in that spot, but in their survival, perhaps in general, but even more, like birds become dependent upon the food that I may or may not provide to them. So talk about that as well, habituation.
Yeah. And there's some research that shows that at least chickadees in particular, that they are not adversely affected by somebody filling a feeder and then stopping and not filling it. You know what I'm saying? That they are really able to find a lot of food. Plus, they're out there storing a lot of the food that they gather. So they may empty your bird feeders in a short period of time and then go back and find all those seeds, so we certainly increase their fitness, their ability to survive a particular winter. But apparently chickadees in particular are not adversely affected if we stop with that feeder. There are other birds that there might be some research that suggests that. And certainly, if I'm going to set up a feeder, I don't want to make the birds around my house struggle. So I would want to keep doing that. But of course, setting up feeders, just by the very fact that we're doing that, we're congregating a lot of birds that in one small area that wouldn't otherwise do that, right? And so if there are diseases among the birds, then it's more likely that it could be passed to other birds while they're all coming to the feeders, to the same feeders. And so it's important that we keep our feeders clean. And in fact, it's important that under the feeder where the seeds are, we should rake those up and clean that up as well, because all of that is a place where the birds might go. And again, diseases can be passed there. And that's one of the problems with feeders of any sort, whether that be for birds or white-tailed deer or whatever you have, is that you're congregating animals in a small area that might not otherwise do that in a natural setting. And so we need to be really aware of that is an environmental issue, actually. I like to bring up the concept of what are environmental issues. And whenever students struggle with those types of things, I will add, what about bird feeders? Aren't those environmental issues? And of course, no, that's good for the wildlife. What about diseases? And a variety of other things. And so, yeah, I think it's important that we keep that clean. And then, of course, there's different types of bird seed that different birds will focus in on. And we here at Wolf Ridge focus just on the black sunflower seeds. That there have been times where we will get other bird seed and put it out here, and it seems like at least the winter birds that are around here don't seem to like all that other stuff that comes in the mix.
There it is on your head.
Yeah, and then what we like to do also here at Wolf Ridge is we like to get suet, put that out there, because the black-capped chickadees like that, as well as the woodpeckers, and so we'll go get suet. And whenever we're able to get deer fat, when people have been hunting deer and we can get some of that deer fat, that is the best. Oh my gosh. All the winter birds around here love that. They'll come in for that over any kind of suet that we would get. I love that.
Nice.
So I was reading a little bit about memory of black-capped chickadees, and I know there's been a lot of research on black-capped chickadees' memory because they keep collecting all those seeds. Like that one that I had mentioned that collected seeds from the feeder 350 sometimes in one day. Well, they do that day after day after day, right? And they're going and hiding all those seeds, and then they need to go back and get them. And there's been some research to suggest that neuroplasticity is a thing in chickadees, and it's seasonal neuroplasticity. In other words, our brains are plastic. We keep reshuffling the ways that they work, and humans, that happens. And there's a lot of neuroplasticity in our younger years. People used to think that then our brains stopped changing as we got older, and that's not quite true. Well, chickadees, they have an increased neuroplasticity during the fall, right when they're gathering all those seeds, and that they'll use different parts of their hippocampus will end up connecting to other parts of their brain to increase their ability to remember the whats and the whens and the wheres of episodic memory is what they're calling it. And so like when you lose your keys, you're like, where did I put those keys? You're latching into your episodic memory, and your hippocampus may be struggling at that particular moment. Wouldn't it be nice if we could change it every single time we put our keys down? Boom, we would just remember that, right? Well, that's what chickadees do. They do that. Wow. Yeah.
365 times or 50.
Exactly. Yeah. And that what I came to understand, at least in one research, was that as they then use a memory, then their brain shifts again so that they don't have to remember that memory anymore. In other words, that energy that would have been kept, that space in their brain that would have been used for that memory, they can now actively use it for something else. And what I understood at WIM one research, and it's hard to know if this is true across the board, is that their brain mass actually increased with every single memory that they made. In other words, they got a heavier head. But as they use those memories, then their brain lost mass, so they wouldn't have to carry around that extra weight. What an adaptive advantage if that actually is true, right?
I'm sure my brain would be so big and heavy, I'd have to like drag it around, right? That
I think Sarah's brain would be big and heavy. Yours,
clearly. So, but you know, for a creature that is so small anyway, and relies on its lightweightness for, you know, flight and whatever, that's amazing that there's that physiological response to knowledge, to memories anyway, and that seems counterproductive. They have to be lightweight to fly, except they get heavier when they have more. Well, maybe they get heavier when they have more resources to support their survival, I suppose, theoretically.
Well, isn't that interesting? So if you have more to remember, then that means you also have more resources, right?
Right.
I think maybe, yeah. I think I hadn't thought of it that way. Huh, yeah. I was only thinking. Go ahead.
We're inventing new knowledge about chickadees. We're making stuff up right now.
We're just making stuff up. Yeah. But actually, all of this research is really prevalent. That I was pulling up lots of papers yesterday and earlier today, just sort of looking at it. And I'll tell you, chickadees, there's been a lot of research on their memories and how they're able to keep all of that. And then I started going down the rabbit hole, of course, and that there's other species of birds that their brains will change in mass to coordinate with breeding season for when they have more songs to sing.
Oh,
I know.
Oh my gosh. So specialized.
Where they've got to maybe use their vocal cords differently, and they've got to remember certain things. It just blows me away. All the different things and the way the researchers can pull that in and do that kind of research.
I wonder, is it because chickadees are just easy to study, or they're especially interesting or especially telling in some way? What's the deal with all that focus on chickadees?
What a great question. And I'm just going to tell you that I think that they're just present. They're just here, right? And that they aren't migratory, so you can have them all year round as well, right? Before I joined you, I was in a webinar on populations, and you know, I'm sure you've read about the 3 billion birds lost over the last. In 1970, we used to have 30 billion birds in North America, and now we have 27 billion. And that there's certain species that have just declined so fast. And then there are other species that are doing well, but overall we've lost 10% of our bird biodiversity, right? Which is a big deal. And they were saying that red-eyed vireos, their population is expanding and doing great. And then just before I left my office and came out here, they were talking about some recent research on red-eyed vireos, and that of the migratory birds that they've been studying, and not all of them have they done this, but they've been getting mercury information. So they'll pull one tail feather, and then they can study the level of mercury in their body by checking that out. Ho, ho, ho. There's a red-breasted nuthatch coming in here too. They're super fun. Anyway, where was I? Red-eyed vireo, yeah. And they were finding that red-eyed vireos have far less mercury in their body than other birds on average.
Whoa.
They're living in the same environment, right? And so in some respects, I would say, well, they should have the same amount as all the other birds, and it's just bad, right? But no, there's something about them, either the way that they take in mercury, the way their body processes, who knows, right? And so then the most recent thing is like, oh, maybe the other bird populations are struggling because of mercury levels. But it's also a lot of other things, you know. It's also industrial farming and just a variety of other things. So, yeah.
Right. Well, so pretty much any wildlife will survive better if it can tolerate the effects of humans, whether that's mercury or, you know, changes of habitat or, you know, other kinds of pollution or land use or any of that. Those will be the species that survive into the future.
Yeah. And I'll share one last thing, because I thought this was unfortunately fascinating in this webinar that I was in, is that the grasslands and the boreal forest are the two places that are registering the largest percentage of bird loss overall. And I think in Minnesota about the grasslands, and I think the northern part, the boreal forest. We got a double whammy there, right? And it turns out that our eastern deciduous forest, I mean, there's loss there as well, but not as much as those other two. Grasslands is overall the worst. And I'm sorry, this is the last thing, is that wetlands overall from 1970 to present, bird diversity and overall biomass is actually increasing. So there's a positive story in wetlands. I mean, how many years have we been teaching that wetlands have been suffering, right? But apparently a lot of our management is actually working.
That's fascinating and so very encouraging. So yes, the things we do on purpose or by accident can cause environmental degradation, but it also can affect environmental improvement as well. And so we can fix our mistakes. We can undo some of the damage. Some of it is not perhaps undoable, but I wonder too if that's the measures are from the 70s, because from say the 50s or 40s to the 70s, so many wetlands were lost. And now from the 70s to today, you know, wetlands have been restored, and maybe not to the levels they once were, but certainly better than maybe were the 70s, perhaps a low point for wetlands. That's interesting.
Yeah. So every time you get a little story, then you have to wonder, but what are the other complicating factors there?
That's right. Nature is not just more complicated than we know. It may well be more complicated than we can know, which is both encouraging. It's bigger than us, and nature knows best, but it's also a little distressing. Like we can't anyway, our human limitations. I want to remind everybody that we are welcoming questions in the chat, both in Zoom and in Facebook, and we will relay those to Joe. So don't be shy. Anything about bird phenology, bird feeding, any of these random things we're talking about, we're just chit-chatting. This is Trail Tuesday, so we're having fun. Oh, there's a squirrel over your right shoulder on that kid's head. That's fun to see too. Do the birds and squirrels get along okay?
Yeah, they do. And I'm kind of nervous that squirrel's going to jump on me.
It might not be pretty. That's funny.
This is fun. And
in and out.
I'm curious, Andrea, if you or actually maybe Amy could bring up the Cornell birds page for chickadees.
Okay.
And then if you scroll down just a little bit, I mean, there's a lot of great information there, but what I'm wondering is if you can get to the calls, and if you were able to play one of them, it would come through this phone here, and we would see how the chickadees here responded.
I got it, Andrea. You ready?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So Amy?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can.
If you played it, I couldn't hear it.
Okay, I tried. Andrea, maybe you should try. Did you find the link?
I think I've got something here. Do you hear it now?
No. So one of the things, maybe it just won't work. And we've got so many things. We're connected to Facebook, connected to Zoom, and goodness, I'm not going to have you go muddling around and trying to find some other
buttons to click.
Yeah, there might be buttons to click. Anyway, we've done that before, where we've been able to play a little bit of a call, and it's just great fun to then listen and watch all the chickadees around, and folks could do that with their phones, go out to their feeders and play a particular call. You don't want to do that too often, because who knows what we're actually saying to the chickadees, right? And you don't want to mess things up, but it is just really fun to be able to see that and to observe the changes. And I remember doing that when I was a college student. We had a tape recorder, tape recorder. Anyway, and we played red-winged blackbird songs on the edge of a wetland in the middle of Iowa, and then we even took a stuffed red-winged blackbird and put it there as well. And oh my gosh, the red-winged blackbirds from all over the wetland came and just attacked that poor bird. Oh my gosh, right? So it's all about the pictorial thing. But it's just,
Funny.
it's fascinating to be able to watch the changes. And well, there's a white-breasted nuthatch coming over here too, perhaps. So we have a red-breasted nuthatch, a white-breasted nuthatch. We've got 7 million red squirrels and a few chickadees.
And do you have any predators that like to hang around your bird feeder areas? Someone's asking about Coopers or Sharpies.
Yeah.
I think you mean sharp-shinned hawks, perhaps?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sharpies. So up here where I'm at right now, that I can't say that I've seen anything that's hanging around these feeders, except for pine martens will come through on occasion, and they eat red squirrels. And then also I've seen shrikes at our other bird feeder over there. But I can't say that I've seen the other types of birds that were mentioned around there. And maybe it's because they've got enough food around us. I mean, we're surrounded by thousands of acres of wildland, and so maybe that's it. And maybe if we were in a more developed area, maybe they would focus in on the bird feeders. But around here, they don't.
Maybe that's one reason why the chickadees converge or gather so freely, because they know it's safe. They can sense that is the danger is lower, perhaps. Hello, little friend.
Isn't that fun?
That's super cool.
So I've also been noticing a few of the birds flying around here, the chickadees, as they land on the wire where the feeders used to be, because I took the feeders down so they'd have to land on my hand, that I can see their legs. And some of them have bands on them, but not those bands that I was talking about that have the electronic part. I haven't seen any of those, but others with Fish and Wildlife Service bands. And so chickadees can live to be 10 years old at the oldest in the wild, and probably more like 4 or 5, something like that. And that's our observation, at least around here, from doing bird banding for so many years. But it's been fun. We've been able to not only put the Fish and Wildlife Service band, but we also put color bands on them. And so we can identify if we see the left leg with a yellow band on it, then it was banded in 2017, for example. And so we can keep track of that particular unit, that year of banding, which has been fun.
Oh, yeah. So that you don't have to get that bird in hand or read the little band to read the number and everything. You can just see visually, oh, that's one from 2 years ago. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Perfect.
Cool.
Yeah. That's the whole point. Yeah.
Neat. Do you want to talk for a minute about the bird banding production that you guys have there? It's not a small thing.
Yeah. And so Wolf Ridge is really fortunate. We've been part of the Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survivorship, MAPS, M-A-P-S, project, which is a North American project. And that we've been part of that since almost the very first year that they started. And that Wolf Ridge is like one of the 5 longest MAPS banding stations in North America. Oh my gosh, right? To be able to have that data. And because of that, we connect with Danielle Kashubi, who is one of the main statisticians and teachers of that and monitors of the project itself. And she comes and she does banding classes here at Wolf Ridge every summer. Last summer, she wasn't able to, right? When we didn't do anything last summer. And this summer, she's very excited to be able to come. But of course, we're trying to figure out how to do that. That wasn't the story you asked me to tell. But anyway, we've been doing that for many, many years. And that every 10-day period, we have one banding session that goes for 6 hours. We have 10 mist nets that are set up in the forest. So not a feeders. So this is just forest birds. And the birds are randomly flying through the woods, and we will catch them, right? And so it's very statistically, regimented, so that we know 6 hours, 10 nets in these spots. And so ever since we started, 89 or 90 is when we started. I can't remember exactly. That we put the nets in the exact same spots. And so the forest is changing, so we have to record some of those, but the nets are in the same spots. Anyway, we catch these birds, and then they are very rarely are they chickadees. They're mostly migratory species. and the one that I'm thinking of is the American redstart, because that is such a gorgeous bird, the American redstart. My gosh. Anyway, there was one particular male American redstart that was caught in a particular net. We'll say net number 3, whatever, doesn't matter. And that for 6 years in a row, he was caught in the exact same net, the
Oh my
exact
gosh.
same banding time period, right? Year after year after year. And they fly all the way down to Brazil for winter. And then it comes
Whoa.
right back to the exact same net. Crazy, right? Talk about memory. We were just talking about memories of chickadees. Imagine that, navigating that entire distance. Not only navigating, but figuring out the calendar. I got to get caught in that exact same net on that particular week. Oh my gosh.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
With so much converging on that happenstance of weather and distance and health and seasonal differences. That's amazing. 6 years in a row.
Yeah. And so
Wow.
catching all kinds of different birds, and that we've been gathering information for that's being used. And so that project, that webinar that I told you I was at, some of the storylines, the data that they're using is from the MAPS project. So Wolfridge was able to contribute to that, which is very fun. And of course, watching the webinar, I don't see the Wolfridge data. It's not like that, but I was just really, really pleased that we were able to contribute to that. And so that is Peter Harris. I got to give him credit where it's due, that he set that up and just maintained that entire time. Yeah.
Had the vision for that it's going to be something that's important and that we'll be able to do it long term, and it's going to add up to something, and just keep doing it. Yeah, that's great.
I think I saw.
Go ahead. A question, in the chat. We'll talk about the markings of the chickadee, and can you distinguish male and female visually?
Yeah, so we are not able to distinguish that without actually capturing them and then taking some measurements. But one of the things also is that our most recent research that we've been doing with those pit tags, the ones that get connected to the computer, is that we've been also taking one small tail feather and then doing the genetics on that and running that along with our math of measuring certain parts of the body. And we're able to find out that lo and behold, those measurements align with male and female. So it is, so we're verifying it, right? And that's the way that we're able to tell. Other birds, they'll have different colors, perhaps, so there'll be different sizes that are enough for us to notice. But black-capped chickadees, they just all look the same. They just all look the same. You can also be able to get a sense of their age, whether they're a first year or a second year or an after second year. That's the language that's used in the bird banding world. Once it's after their second year, they can't
Distinguish. Yeah.
They can't distinguish if it's 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. They're just like, I don't know, it's after second year, right? But with other birds, like a bald eagle, for example, we know when their head turns completely white, they are, I can't remember, is that 4 years old or something like that? I can't remember. The point is that certain birds, you can go beyond that. But at least with chickadees, it's just first year, second year, and after second year.
I'm fascinated about how some birds are have different coloration patterns by sex, and some do not. And now, if it matters that the female is more camouflaged so that she's more hidden in the nest, how come that's not true for others? Like, is it maybe their nests are in different places anyway, or the females? I don't. What's the deal? When I think I have it figured out, right?
And I wish that I knew more about that too, but I think that this is just sort of us babbling about the little bits and pieces of knowledge that we have, that sometimes it's less about the female and more about the male being very colorful in order to draw predators away from the nest as well. And so the male will hang out near a nest, and then if a predator comes by, will fly off presumably capturing the attention. And then also the fact that chickadees are cavity nesters, which was just brought up. And so I wonder if cavity nesters have such that sexual dimorphism or having that different color pattern. I don't know that, but that would be fascinating, and to be able to draw those kinds of conclusions. And we're talking about cavity nesters, that there's so many birds that are cavity nesters, right? I think of nests and I think of the classic robin's nest. But actually here in northern Minnesota, I can't remember the exact number. And so as soon as I give some sort of percentage, then I'm going to be wrong. But a huge, huge number of the birds that are here are ground nesters. They nest right on the ground. And so they're neither in a cavity nor in a nest like the classic robin's nest, right? They nest on the ground. And I think about all the predators that would be able to easily get to them, right? But they're nesting on the ground. Crazy.
Apparently it works out for them, but wow, that is, wow.
And now, because I I diverge in all kinds of different directions here, is that white-tailed deer populations are really doing a number on those ground nesting birds. Why? Because white-tailed deer just go wandering through the forest, eating what they find on the ground. And though they're not adapted to catch birds on flight, they are totally adapted to chew them up if they're babies in a nest. And that's what white-tailed deer do, because there's great energy in that. And so we think of white-tailed deer as being herbivores.
Yeah,
Well,
that's messing with that is messing with my head.
But they will eat meat whenever they get a chance. They just aren't adapted to catch it on the run or on the fly. And so they will eat baby birds. And so that increased white-tailed deer population in northern Minnesota is doing a number on ground nesting birds. Yeah. And so there's so much that goes into this and trying to figure out why are bird populations on the decline. Well, they're also connected to the fact that other populations of animals are on the incline, like white-tailed deer.
Right. And which is the right balance? I don't know. What?
Yeah. Yeah, and is it right for us humans to decide what the balance is? What year do we pick as our balance year?
Right. It's always in flux. That's interesting.
Yeah. Hey, last time that we met, I was down there exploring the Beaver Lodge, I think I was, and babbling a little bit about that. And since then, I read a book called Eager, which is a really great book. Anybody want to read about beavers? Eager is the book to read. And I'll give away the whole plot. It's nonfiction, okay? So I can give away the plot. The plot is that beavers are actually such ecosystem engineers that it's likely that before they were mostly trapped out of large parts of North America, that the ecosystems in like the arid portions of our United States here, Oklahoma, for example, New Mexico, a variety of places, that it's likely that there were a lot more wetlands in those places because beavers were there making wetlands all the time, right? And so the connection to the oh my gosh, help me out here. My brain just stopped working. The when everything got dry and the Dust Bowl era. is that many years before that, beavers were present and there were wetlands, and then they were all trapped out, and so there were no beavers, but the wetlands were still sort of there. And then we went in and plowed the wetlands. Had we left beavers there, then we could have had both farming and anyway, it's just fascinating. So beavers, the fact that they're gone, and so there's a lot of people who are trying to just reintroduce beavers into areas to help the ecosystems recover to pre-European. Yeah. I thought that was fun. So reading that book, I sort of did it an injustice. You'll have to read it on your own.
There you go, everybody. Put it on your reading list. Eager
It's
Beavers.
a really good book. Yeah.
Love it. I just appreciate how just unobtrusive beavers are. They just quietly go about making a ginormous difference in the world.
Yeah.
They just go up there. And they're not necessarily even all that coordinated. Like if they could put all that stuff together in an actual plan, like that would be pretty impressive. But even without that, they're pretty amazing.
So
Nice.
swans, was it swans? I think it was swans. This is in the book as well. In a certain part of New Mexico, that the Native Americans that were there, they had these stories about swans in this particular part. And people are like, swans? There's no swans here. There's no swans here. What are they talking about, right? I wonder what they really meant. Well, they really meant swans, because the swans depended on the beavers. And then when the beavers were trapped out, swans didn't go there anymore. And so people have been reintroducing beavers into that area. And guess what? The swans came back.
Well, there's a lot of research about the changing ecosystem when wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone, which was handy because there was a ton of ecological research before the reintroduction of wolves, and then they could continue that after. And they saw that the elk changed their grazing behavior in the presence of predators, which meant they weren't grazing so heavily on the river valleys, which meant that more saplings of trees could grow and mature. And so then there's like food for beavers. So suddenly the beavers hang out, and then there's, wetlands. And then suddenly there's songbirds in places where Yellowstone never used to have them. And it just is a cascade, right, of effects, a domino effect of impacts so a ripple effect, I think, is what they're calling it in Yellowstone. And it's hard to know, like, is this an actual cause, or do these things all coincidentally happened? Elk had been at their highest population level in history, practically, at the time wolves were reintroduced. And so if the elk population would naturally have crashed, would it have happened anyway? Or, was there some other reason why the wetlands developed? So it is amazing. Beavers are pretty cool, though.
They are.
Beavers make habitat for chickadees and others.
Yeah, and that chickadee was down there just calling, trying to get in on the conversation, I think.
I want to point, go ahead.
The reason my eyes keep wandering is because chickadees just keep going around. I'm just following them. I wish that more would land right here, but I don't know. We're getting some. Go ahead, you're going to say something.
Yeah, no, I want to call everyone's attention back to that, the 360-degree image that Joe shared before. I'm going to post it again just in case somebody came in late and missed it. And there's a little video linked within that image, so you can click on it, and it will be an in-depth description of 8 different chickadee vocalizations and the different meanings that researchers have associated with the different vocalizations. And so you can learn to speak chickadee with that video.
That's beautiful. I love it.
It will also give you a sense, again, if you scroll around within that image, give you a sense for where Joe is right now. You can see he took a picture of himself with the 360-degree camera. So that gives you a sense for more of the surroundings that Joe is in. You can see, where's that kid with the blue sweatshirt? Yeah, you see Joe's in the same seat now as he was then. Do you have to refresh those sweatshirts every once in a while? The lost and found, I'm sure, provides an ample supply.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
That's funny. How is Chickadee Landing different for you in the summer? Talk a little more about the life cycle of the chickadee over the course of the year.
Yeah. So again, I've been here for about 30 years and watched this, and that over the years, I've seen it change both seasonality as well as from year to year. And again, I'm stopping. I stop my talking every once in a while when a chickadee lands. Anyway, and that the biggest thing that we've noticed is that chickadees disperse in the summer. They're not as localized and as clumped together, even if we do have the feed. So there would be less action at the feeders, though it would still remain true. But then also, there's a particular time where they're focused not on seeds, but they want to be able to get insects to feed their young. Okay, and that certainly they are seed eaters, and they will also feed some seed and other different types of things to their young. That there's there you go. That was great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of focus on the proteins. And that's true with a lot of animals, and birds are a great example. That I think about hummingbirds. That my wife does a lot of research on hummingbirds, and that this is a side story, but it helps to support what I'm talking about. Is that we think of them as eating nectar, right? And sure, they do. But when they're feeding their young, they mostly feed their young spiders and gnats. They'll go and pick spiders right out of their spider webs, and they'll also collect gnats on the fly. It's called hawking. I call it hummingbirding, actually. But anyway, and they'll just grab them right out of the air and then go feed their young that, because there's a lot more energy in that. And so it's this packed energy. Anyway, so they're often feeding on that, less about the seeds. And whenever they have the opportunity to pick up seeds from the ground, they're much more likely to do that, I've noticed. So clearly when there's snow on the ground, there's less options, so they're willing to go to the feeders. Now, what I'm saying is my observations here in northern Minnesota, okay? It may be different where other people are living with those birds. And so when you draw some sort of conclusion about anything on this planet and you try to apply it someplace else, sometimes it doesn't work. But that's what I see around here. And the last thing is that we have noticed that when we leave the feeders up over the course of the summer, that bears will also come and tear them down. And when they tear them down, then suddenly they become an issue, and there's that human bear interaction, that potential. And so we just have slowly over the years stopped filling our feeders during the summer. And then we start up again in the fall when the bears have gone to sleep. And it's mostly because we're worried about that bear-human interaction here at Wolf Ridge.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. And I want to call everyone's attention to the chat here in the Zoom, some suggestions for some great children's books about chickadees. One is The Chickadee Spirit, and the other is Chickadees at Night by Bill O. Smith, illustrated by Charles Murphy. So hopefully by verbally saying that, the folks on Facebook will get that reference as well.
That's great. So, that's great. Hey, I wonder if you could copy that out of the chat, because I'd love to have those as well. And I don't have anything to write on.
Sure. Don't.
I copied them into our Facebook feed, so it'll be captured forever.
Okay.
I also put your eager book reference there as well.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Nice. Excellent.
I'm not seeing the comment feed here. So Amy, thanks for tracking that. Great. Nice. So yeah, I think it's interesting that they have dietary needs change over the course of the year. That may explain why I like to eat more chips all winter or whatever, right? That they need, like the black oil sunflower seeds, maybe they do need a higher fat content food source to survive the colder temperatures, since they do stay around all winter. And then in summer, they need more of the protein to hatch eggs, as well as to feed babies who are growing from, little to big.
Yeah,
that makes sense. There's a logic to it anyway. I can make up a logic that works in my head.
So I want to add to that. During the wintertime, chickadees go, I can't remember what term they use. Is it torpor when you drop your temperature at night and then raise it in the daytime? I think that's right.
Yeah. Okay, I accept that.
Whatever it's called. And if I use the wrong word, but the point is that they're able to drop their body temperature 13, 14, 15 degrees at night in order to reduce that overall difference between their internal body temperature and the external temperature, so that they can retain that energy. And then they go and they fill up on food all day, and then at night drop their temperature again, burn off those reserves, wake up, eat again. Yeah. Imagine
That's
being
amazing.
able to drop your body temperature 15 degrees.
To conserve energy. 15 degrees decrease of human body temperature is death, right? But not only can chickadees survive it, this is aids their ability to tolerate winter, and they do it routinely. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm going off into hummingbirds again, but I know that hummingbirds will do that even in the summer. So in order to be able to survive those cooler nights around here, they'll drop their body temperature. And that even if they're just stressed because they haven't gotten enough food in a particular day, my wife, as she's been studying them, has found them just sort of frozen in one spot, so to speak. And she's able to then, I've seen this happen a couple times. She'll take them and put their mouth into a feeder, and then they'll slowly start to and then they can fly off. Yeah. And so a lot of animals probably do that sort of a thing. I only know of chickadees and hummingbirds.
Sure. A lot of the critters we think, hibernate in winter. It's more of a episodic, reduction of calorie consumption and thus calorie usage. as well.
Yeah. Yeah. This is great fun. So you're getting snow down there? Is that true?
We got like 9 inches in Rochester this
No
was it
way!
yesterday? I know, right? So it looks here like it looks there, except it's supposed to look like that there. And it was all green. It's starting to like even get hazes of green down here. Not on the trees, but at least on my mowed lawn. And I'm starting to feel optimistic. But that's all right. I mean, this is what we, it needs to do. And I'm sure there'll be a time when we're glad for the moisture, but.
And it's currently snowing in western Minnesota right now.
Oh gosh, Amy.
Yikes.
Good.
Yikes.
So part of the reason why I bring that up is the phonology. And I wanted to touch on that a little bit, the phonology of the birds. So right now, I focused on the chickadees, and we already heard that Phoebe or the sweetie or whatever call, right? We heard that because it's springtime, right? Well, there's also, we're getting ready for a whole bunch of other birds to start to change. And I heard that our ravens that nest down on Raven Lake, that they're sitting on the nest right now.
Oh,
well,
okay.
Only the nest for one reason, right? So they must have eggs laid already. So that's amazing. And that's just off in the distance right over there. In fact, I'm looking through the woods at the cliff that they'd be nesting on. And 2 days ago, I was out walking on Shovel Point, which is at Teddy State Park, right on Lake Superior. And I saw a bunch of feathers from some sort of a songbird type of bird. I couldn't quite tell, but it was a small bird, right? A bunch of feathers laying all over the rock, and right in a spot where routinely, summer after summer after summer, I see peregrine falcons not nesting there, but standing there and ripping birds apart. And so I'm like, I think the peregrine falcons are maybe back already. At least one of them seems to be back. So things are starting to shift here.
It's time, because even if there's a random snowstorm, you can't turn back the calendar. The wildlife know, we know, the daylight is what it is. So it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
Andrea and Joe, do you want to take a minute and just talk about, Joe's going to be one of our special guest presenters at the Gathering Partners Conference. And we're going to have lots of cool field trips at the Wolf Ridge Environmental Learning Center. So maybe we could just do a little commercial for that.
That sounds great. I'll kick off, and then Joe, you can give your pitch. But everybody, we are so excited to be able to host our annual Gathering Partners Conference. We call it Gathering Partners, a conference for friends of Minnesota's natural resources. And so everyone is welcome to participate. Last year, we had all these great plans for an in-person conference in Two Harbors, Minnesota. And then everyone knows right about this time of year, everything went to heck and we canceled it outright. At the time, we did a short virtual conference, and Joe was a Rockstar virtual field trip experience. And I would even say, like, this Trail Tuesday is an upgrade from all the cool things we tried back then. So we learned then, we're doing even better now. And so so that was neat. But this year, we're going to go back to doing a more robust Gathering Partners opportunity. It will be a hybrid conference with some virtual sessions, concurrent sessions, plenary speakers, social activities, awards, all that good stuff virtually. And we're also going to we believe we'll be able to offer some in-person field trip experiences. So you'll have to sign up and register. Everyone drives themselves. It'll just be half-day sessions. Everyone will be socially distanced. Everyone will be wearing masks and all that good stuff. But we'll be in person in the Northwoods, and I am so excited. There will be a couple of different offerings. There'll be Friday afternoon on May 14th, and then Saturday morning, May 15th, and Saturday afternoon, May 15th. And so a couple of choices during each of those 3 time slots. Some of them will be at Wolf Ridge, and some will not be, but many of them will be at Wolf Ridge. It turns out to be a really helpful home base for us, and their staff have been so supportive and encouraging for our conference. And so we'll have sessions with Joe specifically. He'll be doing, I'm going to have you talk about botany and your naturalist skills session in a second, Joe. Other things we'll be doing, there will be a migratory bird session with Peter Harris, the rock star of previous mention, and he's going to be doing a thing on air and water quality. So that'll be interesting. We're going to hear about growing organic. We're going to hear about Ojibwa heritage. We're going to hear about voyageur lifestyle, so the cultural side of Minnesota as well, Minnesota's history and modern days. And so I'm running through my head on some of those topics. So So Joe himself was going to lead a couple sessions. You in the audience may or may not know that although Joe has been super fun to talk to about beavers and now birds, he's quite an expert on those things, but people get Joe talking about plants and everybody's going to be having a good time. Joe is really quite an expert on all things plants. And so he's written a few field guides in that regard. And what are we going to do in the botany session, Joe?
Yeah, so depending on the phenology at the time, we'll go to different habitats, and I'm hopeful that what we'll do is we'll be able to skirt the edge of some evergreen forest and some deciduous forest and a wetland. Those three in particular is what I'm thinking, and wouldn't it be fun to have a little rock outcrop as well, so we get all of that, and we'll be focusing on ferns and their allies, as well as lichens, and then anything that's flowering. Oh my gosh. And I know from experience, and I'll bet you a lot of other folks know here as well, is that once you start and you think, okay, we're going to walk from here to here, and that distance is more than 5 feet, then you have just fooled yourself. And so what we'll do is we will dedicate ourselves to getting to a location, and then we're just going to dive in, and it'll be really, really fun. So more of a group learning experience, and we'll just go to different habitats and figure out what's going on there. So it'll be a little bit of that, learning about the identification of and the ecology of the different organisms, plants in particular, right? And then the other that I'm going to be doing as well is just sort of naturalist skills, naturalist behaviors. We'll be focusing on nature journaling of sorts. But what I've been doing over the past few years is diving into other naturalist lives and the different qualities that they had. And so whether it be Rachel Carson or John Muir or, all kinds of other different people, it seems like there are 4 qualities that happen over and over and over again. One is that really powerful naturalists slow down. And so it's like, it's not about walking a long distance, it's about walking 5 feet, right? Slow down, whatever that might be. Or maybe slowing down and literally sitting in one spot for an hour right here and watching the chickadees and the squirrels, right? So that's one thing. The next one is to notice things. So it's not just about slowing down, but it's also about noticing. So using all of our senses and noticing things. The third part that seems to be consistent across the naturalist field is that they take notes of some sort, whether that be with cameras or with journals. We're going to be doing it with journals, and just taking those types of notes. And that some people take notes just by counting. They'll count the numbers that they see, or they'll write their field notes about what the bird is doing, behavioral, whatever it might be. And the last thing is that they share with others. And so it's all about slowing down, noticing things, taking notes, and sharing with others. And those seem to be qualities that are consistent. Now, there are some naturalists who do other things beyond that, but you go across history of all the great naturalists that we can think of, and those 4 things come up over and over and over and over again. So those are the 4 things we'll focus on. And we'll just go and do whatever seems to be right at the time and take advantage of the conditions and the enthusiasm in our group where we want to go. That's the plan.
Nice. I can't wait. You guys get in a room with Joe, not even indoors, get together with Joe, and you are guaranteed to learn a whole bunch. I think just learning the skill of how to find things, how to notice, how to know, how to think about what we're looking at. I need to experience Joe's mentoring in that regard.
Thank you. You're far too kind, but thank you.
That's great. Well, we are coming up on 2:15. So folks, put any last questions in the chat. Amy can let us know if there's any on Facebook. And so we can see what Joe's gonna be able to tell us yet before we're done. And it's just been so fun seeing the birds flit in and out of your hand. There's been quite a lot of activity on your head. Everybody, maybe you didn't hear us chatting at the beginning. He did plant some seeds on his hat, so that's a secret method there. But they come for that, so that's good. And they don't, they're kind of habituated now to humans. They're not afraid of humans so much. And in the case of chickadees, that's not going to turn around and cause a problem for humans. and as long as the birds keep getting their food, that doesn't seem to be hazardous to them as well. But you heard them, Joe, say that they're trying not to habituate other species like bears by providing food. And so being mindful of maybe not over habituating. Although I do know that there are places where bird feeding is not allowed for that particular reason, is that it habituates them to humans. But
yeah. Hey, since we have just a moment of pause here, if there isn't any questions yet, is that I just want to emphasize that the next time we get together, and I can't remember the date, whatever.
I got it here.
Is that I'm excited about going to some waterfalls. And so, so actually my whole purpose over this next month between now and the next time that we meet is I intend to go to a bunch of different waterfalls on the North Shore and get pictures of them at different times. And make those available as well. But I'm gonna clearly I'm gonna stay at one waterfall, and I'm not gonna wander from place to place. But there's such beautiful waterfalls along the North Shore, such wonderful little magical spots, as well as just the ecology of them, the different mosses and ferns and lichens that are growing there. There you go. See, it's gonna be a botany sort of a thing, even though it's waterfalls.
Nice. I have that. We're doing that on April 13th. And so everybody plan to come back for Trail Tuesday. We'll post it again in the Facebook page, make an event for it and post it in the stream, and Joe will share it to the Wolf Ridge audience. And so that is, we'll keep doing this because it's crazy fun for me anyway. I hope it's fun for everyone else. We'll do it again in April where we're going to feature Lake Superior. And then in June, Joe, you guys are going to hear about Joe's moth work because he's also super knowledgeable about moths. Who knew? He's got his secret methods for attracting moths. So birds, chickadees, winter, maybe it'll be completely different by the time we see you again, Joe, in waterfall session and April 13th. Spring waterfalls on the North Shore, you guys, I mean, this is the time, right? We maybe would talk a teensy bit about geology and then plenty about the plants and the water and all of the good stuff. I'm picturing roaring waters. I'm imagining hearing that. So
me too.
Can't wait.
I'll tell you, I was at the Caribou waterfalls on the Caribou River. You know how big and beautiful those are. Oh my gosh, I was there, and that there were holes in it, so it was starting to melt up, right? And there were holes in that big ice sheet that comes down there, and I could just watch the water flow through there. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to be a couple weeks from now, maybe 3 weeks from now, and there won't be any ice, and it'll just be roaring.
Can't wait. Nice. Joe knows all the cool secret spots to go to too. So find us a good one. Wherever you want to present from is where we'll meet you next time. So with that, I'll say thank you so much, Joe. Everybody, we have some comments in the chat thanking you for how interesting it is. And it's been fun to chat. So happy Trail Tuesday, everybody. Honestly, please share your own pictures or own videos, what spring is doing where you are. Doesn't look very springy here, but that's okay. Again, you can't turn back the calendar. So spring is coming, and it's been super fun to hear what's the deal with chickadees at Wolf Ridge in Finland, Minnesota. So thank you so much, Joe. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.